Hello. I'm going to go ahead and give you an overview of some of the Python work that we're going to be doing in this class. This is a view that hopefully you all are comfortable with. So I'm going to click on Modules and navigate to, as soon as it comes up, looks like I have a slow internet connection, but hopefully it will come up and yep. So notice I've got notes on fall registration. By the way, if you haven't done that, you need to start on that. So go ahead and click on week 7 and 8, which is July 13. That's the first day we're going to be starting to talk about Python. You'll notice we'll also cover chapter 10 of your Raptor type, or the Prelude to Programming class or book, and we're just going to talk about basic sequential data file access. We'll talk about accessing data in more detail, or accessing data files in more detail in Python also. So we've got PowerPoints and lecture notes, and of course your assignment. I hope by now you have clicked on installing Python instruction sheet and have made sure to install Python. So if I click on this, of course I have some instructions for Windows 8 users. Any Mac users, if you need any help with installing Python on your Mac, you'll have to let me know via email and I'll provide more directions. So let's click on this thing. You'll notice that I have step-by-step instructions on how to install and essentially test your Python installation. So even have a little sample code, sample pseudocode. Well, hopefully again this instructions are helpful. You'll notice that on my system, if I click on all programs, I have Python 3.4, which is, I believe, the most recent version. And so you click on Python 3.4 and then idle. Of course, you get this only after you follow these instructions to install Python on your system. You'll notice I've also tagged it to my taskbar. That way I can get to it quickly. So let's go ahead and do that. I mean, I'm hoping that the installation of Python has been pretty simple. So we'll go ahead and click on Python idle, and all you're going to get is idle is essentially a tool that allows you to write Python programs and also run your Python programs. So the first thing you need to do really here, you could use Python as a regular interpreter, maybe even a calculator. You could say, what's 3 plus 4 times 8? And it'll tell you it's 35. Some basic interpreter work. But this is time consuming and it doesn't really serve any purpose. So what you need to do is you need to click on File and do New File. And of course, as soon as you get there, you want to save this. So we say Save As or Save. And I don't want to really store any files in this folder because that's Python's folder. So what I usually do, maybe I'll go to my C drive and look for a folder called Test. And I've got a whole bunch of other stuff, but I'll just type this as test1. And notice the extension of Python files is py. The W, by the way, is for Windows, but so usually that's what we do. The extension is py. So that's it. So you got a file named test1.py. There's nothing in it. Now let's go back to this instructions here, and notice I've given you a short Python example. Let me just actually maybe walk through this, and we'll run it together, I guess, through this recording, and get it on where is, oh, there you go, it's here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this from this environment into my Python idle, which was right there, and paste it. Notice this Python editor, or this idle, color codes things for you. Of course, by now you know that pound symbol tells the Python compiler to ignore whatever follows it. Remember, this is something that we didn't have in Raptor because Raptor doesn't allow for commenting out program statements, so this is very handy. And so this program shows some basic concepts of Python. Of course, for your homework assignments, this is where you write your name, how long does it take to finish the program, and you explain the purpose of the program. All right, let's now this print hello is actually commented out, so nothing's going to happen if I run it. So this is some basic assignment statement. Now remember, in Raptor, instead of saying x equals to 4, we had to drag an assignment statement and type x in the variable name and 4 in the value. And then y equals to x times 2 would be another statement. But notice how Python, like other high-level languages, makes these assignments very simple. Print essentially says print to the console, which is this output window, or essentially on your display on your monitor. So x is 4, we'll print 4. Y is x times 2, which is 8, so we'll print 8. X equals to 7. Well, we'll just change x from 4 to 7. So we can also annotate our output. So we say tick mark x equals comma x. By the way, in Python, you can use double quotes or single quotes for your string constants. In Raptor, we use double quotes. So that's 7, and then x equals to x over 2, so you expect that to be 3.5, and then you print the x, but I commented out. Now, in order to uncomment this line, all I have to do is just go there and delete it. Delete that pound, and notice that becomes a regular statement. Now, of course, another thing that we have to be able to do is to accept input from the user. So notice I have space, I need a space there. Now, the input function in Python accepts a prompt, so in this case, enter a value, and then reads whatever you give it as a string. So if I put in 28, it will read it as the string 28. So what we need to do is we need to convert it to a float. We could convert it to a float or a double or an int. Again, these are the data types that we talked about in the early chapters of your book. Of course, the optional textbook that I provided will also be very helpful in explaining all of this material. Of course, that book is available at the West Charleston Library, and you can also probably find it, something like it, online. Okay, so whatever the user inputs is going to be converted to a number that can have decimal points. Then it prints you entered, followed by the value that the user entered. So if I put in 23, it'll come back with you entered 23. Y equals to x times 2. Well, if it was 23, y becomes 46, and then we just print y. Notice I didn't annotate y, but if I wanted to, I could do something like y is equal to comma y. Now, num1 equals float, enter a number. Well, by now you know what this means. You ask the user to input a number, you convert it to any number. Again, remember the input function reads data as a string, so before you can use it in addition or subtraction or any kind of operations, you have to convert it to number. So for num1, if I put in 2, for num2 I put in 3, total becomes 2 plus 3, which is 5, and we'll put in the total. We'll put a space in there, not that it's important, and probably take that space out. Yeah, remember, spacing within these tick marks doesn't matter at all, because they'll just be displayed as they're written. Okay, numemp equals how many employees do you have? Again, the function is input. By the way, most people have problems with these, matching the parentheses. So hopefully you get the syntax error a few times and you'll find out that what you're missing. So numemp is now going to be whatever the user input. Print, you have numemp employees. Well, if I said 5, it'll say you have 5 employees. Here's an example to get age. Notice here I'm converting age to an int. So this variable age is going to be an integer, essentially a whole number. Now, in here, all I'm just showing you is that we can actually read the age as a float. Of course, remember in any programming language, this variable is just overwritten with this value. So we always keep the most recent value. And then days equals to age times 365 and multiply by 365, and then we write it. Okay? Here's a little pseudocode. Hopefully you can read through this, and then that's the actual code that solved this problem. Again, you can probably do this in your sleep in Raptor, and here it is done in Python. Now, one thing you notice is that this format function allows you to tell Python how many digits after the decimal point to use for displaying the number. So 0.4f means 4 digits after the decimal point. Of course, with something like this, for time and distance, probably 2 digits will do. But again, you can keep it at 4. All right, so let's go ahead and quickly run this. So when I click on Run Module, it says, okay, you have to save this. Of course, you have to save it. So notice this is exact interpretation of what we just did, right? So print this 4 is due to this print statement. This 8 is due to this print statement. 3.5 is due to the fact that we divide 7 by 2 and we print this value. Now it says enter a value. Now it just says enter a value, right? So if I put in 2.9, it says, okay, you enter 2.9. Enter a number. I want to put in A123. Well, that's not a number. When you do this, notice what Python does, it just dies. And it says, I cannot convert a string to a float. Now, there are ways, of course, as you become better programmers, is to, parse this A out and then just keep the number maybe, or tell the user in a loop that that's not the right way of doing things. But again, we're just talking about basics of Python. So let's run it again. This time I put in 2. Sometimes it does that. And then enter a number. So I'll put in 4. Enter another number. I'll put in 8. Now let's put in 8.9 and see if it dies or anything like that. No, it didn't. It read it as a float. So floats could be any number. How many employees do you have? I'll say I have 100 employees. Okay, it says you have 100 employees. Enter your age in years. So say I'm 20 years old. And it says, ask it again. So I'm 30 years old. So that's 10,950 days old. How fast are you going? Let's say I'm going 70 miles an hour. And how far are you going? Let's say I'm going, say, to California, Los Angeles, and say it's 300 miles. So it's going to take me 4.2857 hours to get there. Okay, if I drove that at that speed. Okay, so that's it. That's an example of a Python program that uses some basic assignments, output, and input. Again, I have a lot more notes, and of course the earlier recordings that I've done on every one of these concepts will apply. You just have to fast forward through the Raptor part to get to the Python part. Okay, all right, let's go back to modules again. Well, as a matter of fact, let's just go back one. And here's an example when we do, let's see, using decisions. Okay, so let's click on that. And same program. Again, in order to run this, I'm going to copy all of this. And I'm going to go to Python. Now, I don't want to really lose any of this stuff. So one thing I can do is I can do edit and say select all, or just Control A. So notice everything is selected. Then I go to format and I say comment out the entire region, meaning that everything now is commented out. If I run this thing, nothing will happen because none of this code is being executed. Notice if I run this thing, it's still going to ask me to save it, and nothing happens. Okay, now since I have this, and this again just for the demo purposes, I'm just going to move down here and say Control V, which was this program. So let's quickly look at the syntax of the if statement. Now age equals to input, enter your age. We already know what that does. Now the if statement starts with the word if, and then the key here is this ending colon at the end of the if statement. If you don't have that, it's not going to work. Else clause, you also need a colon. Now notice that Python automatically indents code for you for the block that's going to be executed for whether if it's the if clause or the else clause. So Python does that for you. Let me just do this. So if I just type if age greater than or equal to 18, as soon as I put in a colon, when I press enter, it'll automatically tab for me. So when I say print, hello, notice here I used a double quote, which I said is perfectly fine. Now notice when I press enter, it'll still say, it'll still executing all the code within this this block. Now when I press enter again, it keeps indenting. Of course, I don't want to do that forever, because this is the code I want to execute when age is greater than 18. So what I need to do is just backspace to go back to the beginning of the line, and then I'll just type my else clause. Now notice what happens when I press enter. It does not indent. It doesn't indent because you didn't add a colon there. So now I add the colon and it indents. Okay, so that's how you type in Python decision statements. Okay, so let me go ahead and get rid of that because I just wanted to show you how to type this. So if age is greater than or equal to 18, so if the user puts in 25, this statement is executed. Otherwise, this statement is executed. But does that mean that we're going to still follow through the rest of the code? Of course. Test is 50. Is 50 bigger than 70? No. So none of this stuff is going to be executed. Remember that with a conditional statement, if this is true, we perform all the statements inside that if block. Otherwise, we don't do anything. In this case, we don't have an else clause, so nothing happens anyways. Again, we will continue. We ask the user to input a test score, and then we check that test score. If it's between 90 and 100, we say grade is A. Now notice there's one, source of confusion here, is that instead of using the word else if, Python just uses one word and asks elif, E-L-I-F. Again, some languages like Java or C or C++ actually spell it out and they have a space in between, so they'll type something like else if. But again, that's the syntax of Python. So we're saying that, okay, if the user puts in a test score, if it's between this range, grade is A, and then we exit and go to the next statement. If it's not between 90 and 100, grade is B. Supposing if it's between 80 and 90, the grade is B, and then we exit. So if all of these statements fail, then we say grade equals to invalid, which is a else clause, which is a catch-all clause that makes sure that you have code for every condition. So it's going to say, hey, this is your grade. Name, input, enter your name. Now, what do you see here that you didn't see with the other ones? Well, remember when we asked for the test, we converted to a float. For age, we converted to an integer. But for name, we don't have to do anything because input automatically reads everything that you type in as a string of characters. So you definitely don't want to convert that because we want the program to be able to read a string of characters. Notice we say if name equals Bill Beck, then we print instructor found. Num is enter a number. Again, we're asking the user to input a number, and then based on the value of the number, we either say hello or greetings. Again, remember an if clause in this case is either or. It says, hey, give me a number between 1 and 5. Okay, if number is 1, it'll print I. Looks like it's printing Roman numerals for numbers. Okay. Quantity, give me something. How many items did you sell? Now, if the quantity is between a particular range, I'll give you a discount. So discount is 20 or 30 and so on, and then I'll tell you what your discount is. I can even ask you for the cost of a product and find the new price after some discount is applied. So what I'm hoping is that you can actually run this code and you can see exactly what's happening at every line of code. So notice here it says input your age. So if I put in, say, 35, I expect this to get this print statement which says enter. So notice it says enter. Enter a test score. If I put in 123, where will it go? It says grade is invalid because 123 didn't satisfy any of these values, so it says grade is invalid. It says enter your name. If I put in Joe, will it say instructor found, or will it say nothing? Well, it just says Joe because it printed the name, but of course name wasn't equal to billbag. And by the way, this shows you how to compare for a string. By comparison, by the way, greater or equal to means greater or equal to. Two equal signs is checks for equality. Again, this stuff is all in the documentation, in the notes that I have provided, and also in your optional textbook. Or you could just do a Google search on Python equality check, and you'll see it'll come up with that operator, the equal operator. And also notice that there's no space between the equal. They're two equal signs. Okay, so that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and now I want to grab everything from here all the way there. Go to format, go to comment, and now I have nothing, no code again because I commented everything out. Now the last thing I want to do through this recording is go back to to modules and just go through one other example involving loops. By the way, notice there's a practice file, there's some answers, and this is what I was talking about. There's tons of information. Now, one thing I want to direct your attention to is this newboston.com website, this site. This is great for, they have little tutorials and videos on how to use Python. Of course, when you do go through any of these links, just scan through what you already know. And if there's anything that we haven't covered or, it's not in your textbook or anything like that, you can easily ignore those. So hopefully, you don't get bogged down with some of the details that some of these websites provide. Okay, so we have one more before we end this recording. So here's a short Python example file using loops. So we'll click on that, and hopefully it'll come up. Again, same thing. I'm gonna copy all of this, and then I'm gonna go back to my program. I really don't need any of these, but that's okay. I'll keep it. Okay. So notice, looks like everything even here is all commented out. Of course, if you guys want to test this, what you do is you uncomment it. But if you look at this, the only thing that's uncommented is here. So let's see, what does this loop do? This is a shortcut loop that essentially uses a function named range. And you give it the beginning value and the last value. So this says, and this k could be any variable. So this says, start k at 1, and then check, is it less than, not less than or equal, but is it less than the last value, which is 5? Well, 1 is less than 5, so it will execute this. So say print k. So k is now 1. And then it goes back, and it automatically increments k by the step size, which is not here, so it assumes 1. So k is now 2, and it'll print 2. So if I run this, you expect to get the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, of course not 5. So let's check that quickly. And notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now notice what happens if I change this to 6, right? And change this to 2, then what do you think is going to happen? Looks like it's going to go from 1 to 5, and it does not, and it goes with steps of 2 because of this 2. So let's try that. And 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so this is what is called a shortcut for loop. Now let's go in and uncomment some of the stuff that I had commented, and right here, let's just do it one at a time. That way we don't get a lot of stuff coming out of this program. So I'll say uncomment region, and okay. Oh, when I did that, by the way, I did uncomment this line, which is not good because that was just my comment line. So I'll just put a pound symbol. Otherwise, you will get an error message. Okay, a while loop, essentially, or a while keyword, is a keyword that allows you to repeat a process. Now, of course, you already know how a loop works in Raptor. In Raptor, we just dragged a symbol that does a repetition. Here, we just have to type it out. So k is 1. Again, I use k, but you could use any variable you want to. Total is just any variable. It looks like I'm trying to accumulate something. And then in fact, this says ask for the number of items and then calculate and display the average of the numbers. So if you want to find the average of these numbers, you have to add them all up and then divide them by the total. Okay, so again, you guys read that on your own. So maxnum is something that we get from the user. So the user says, yeah, I have 5 items to total. So the loop says so long as k is less than or equal to maxnum. By the way, this is called a pre-test loop because you're looping, or you're making the condition at the beginning of the loop. Just like the if statements, don't forget this all-important colon, otherwise nothing is going to work. So what do? K is 1. Let's say maxnum is 3. So is 1 less than or equal to 3? It is. So it will print k equals to 1. Then it will ask you for a number, and whatever you give it, it will say total equals 0 plus that number. So if I put in 10, total is now equal to 10. What happens to k? K becomes 2. Now remember, if you don't do this, if you don't, but again, and I'm pretty sure that in one of the earlier recordings, I talked about the pseudocode for a loop. And this is a way to essentially make sure that you don't have an infinite loop. So k is equal to k plus 1, and so k is now 2. 2 is less than or equal to 3 because we said there were 3 items, and it goes through this process. It exits the loop when k becomes more than the number of items. So if I said I had 3 items, k is going to be 4, and then it exits the loop. Notice I already have a variable called maxnum. So average is going to be average of all these numbers, which is the total divided by the max. So let's go ahead and run quickly through this. First thing it's going to ask me is how many items do I have? Let's say I have 3 items. It says, okay, k is 1, enter a number. So I'm going to put in 10, and then 20, and then 30. So what do you expect to get now? Well, obviously, I've entered my 3 numbers. K is going to be 4. 4 is going to exit the loop, so I'm going to see my total and the average. So the total of 10, 20, and 30 is 60, and the average is 20. So, and then of course 135 is the result of this this thing here, which is kind of annoying now. So I'm going to format and comment it out. Okay. So there. Now we already saw what this does, so I'm going to comment this. And we go in here, it says, what if we don't know the number of items? Well, if you don't know the number of items, you have to use a sentinel loop to keep asking the user for data, and only end it when the user doesn't have any more data to enter. Okay? So number, enter a number. Again, we did this in Raptor, but we provided some sort of a sentinel value to tell the user what to put in order to stop asking for more numbers. So you say, while number is not equal to 999, then go in, add up the totals, increment your k, so you know how many items you're reading, and ask again. So notice you have to ask one before the loop and one inside the loop. Now here I'm saying if k is greater than 1, then do the average. Otherwise, you say, hey, there's something happened because this total was never accumulated. And notice we're dividing by k minus 1. Remember that because we're adding k by 1, if I read 4 items, that k is going to be 5. So you could do this. And then you could also have something like this, print statement, just for debugging purposes to make sure that your code is doing what it's supposed to do. So let's say I want to input the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll run this thing, and it says, okay, enter a number. So I'm say 1. Then it says 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll say I'm done. So I'll put 999. So what I expect to get is the total of these numbers divided by total number of items, which is 5. So I think it's going to be 15 divided by 5, so it should be 3.0. So total is 15, and the average is 3. Now, of course, this works for anything, right? So any sort of numbers I put in, it should work. Now here it says enter a number, and I said, I'm done. I don't even want to enter any numbers. So if I type 999, what happens? Well, notice this loop says while number is not 999, but number is 999, so none of this will be executed. So we go here. What is the value of k? Well, 1, because we never went through this loop. Is 1 greater than 1? No. So it's going to say okay then. So let's do that. So there. It didn't do any averages. It didn't do anything for us because you chose not to give it any sort of values. Okay? All right, so what did I do here? I went to modules, and I went to your week 7 and 8, chapters 2, 3, and 4, and essentially showed you how to write Python code that deals with basic input, output, basic variable assignments and basic input and output. We talked about a example file using decisions and an example file using repetitions. Of course, we're going to be talking about arrays and files and functions in Python, just like we did in Raptor. Okay, I hope this helps a little bit. Keep all those questions going and ask questions. Goodbye for now.